Hello, you're listening to Popcorn Pals, and this episode, I'm joined by content creator Jayden Rodrigues, where we're discussing The Flash. I'm Timmy Fland, movie buff, and this is Popcorn Pals, a popcorn podcast with Lee and Tim spin-off, where I'll be joined by a rotation of movie-loving legend guest hosts to discuss the latest and greatest new big screen releases. It's the same salty fun with some new flavors, and I'm so pumped to have one of the nicest guys and hardest working content creators out there across movies, games, and WWE wrestling joining me in this episode. Welcome, Jayden. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on Popcorn Pals, Tim. I hope you're ready for this. I'm super excited to be talking about The Flash. It is my most anticipated film for this year, 2023. I mean, it was meant to be last year, but we'll move it to this year. But yeah, I'm excited, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you know what? When this movie was coming up, and we've been waiting so long, as you know, you were the first person that I thought of within this spin-off forum. I was like, I have to get Jay on to talk about The Flash, because obviously this is a podcast. You can't see what Jay is wearing right now, but he's wearing a Flash jumper. There it is. So he's come dressed for the part. So thanks for playing along.
That's all right. Just ignore the stuff behind me, though, if you can see me. Obviously, you can see me, but yeah, I'm just covered in like pop culture goodness behind me. So yeah, I'm excited to be talking about The Flash.
Awesome. Friends, this is a warning right at the top of the episode that Jay and I will be going into spoiler territory with The Flash, because there's just so much good stuff in this movie that if we talk around it, I'll just feel less than satisfied, I think. So if you haven't seen the film, come back and listen once you have, because the last thing we want to do is spoil your experience of this movie in any way, shape, or form. All right, Jay, let's get nuts.
I like that.
Yeah, thought you'd like that one. Worlds collide in The Flash when Barry Allen uses his superpowers to travel back in time in order to change the events of the past. But when his attempt to save his family inadvertently alters the future, Barry becomes trapped in a reality in which General Zod has returned, threatening total annihilation. Teaming up with a very different Batman and an imprisoned Kryptonian, Barry must save the world that he is in and return to the future that he knows. But will making the ultimate sacrifice be enough to reset the universe? The Flash is directed by Andy Muschietti, who has directed It and It Chapter 2, from a screenplay by Christina Hodson, who wrote the screenplays for Birds of Prey and Bumblebee. So she's played in the superhero space and sort of that big action-adventure space before in the Transformers franchise. Also written by Toby Harold, who has written the recent Transformers movie, speaking of Rise of the Beast. Now, The Flash stars Ezra Miller, Michael Keaton, Sasha Calle, Michael Shannon, and Ben Affleck. Jay, you can't rush a good sandwich is one of the first lines of dialogue in the film, in The Flash. And we've been waiting for this film for so long. What were your expectations going into this one? You referenced at the top of the episode, it's your most anticipated. So how were you dealing with those anticipated feelings for so long?
You know what, Ezra Miller as an actor, I loved the first Justice League, and then of course Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I was just super excited to see more of the Flash play out. The tones that we were getting from the trailer was sort of on par with the Zack Snyderverse, which was awesome, but I guess, that whole mess of what was happening with, the state of DC. But I guess with this movie, it's great how they set it up. From the first, couple of minutes, you know what you're in for. There's great comedy in this film, and then there's also some great action scenes as well. A lot of heart and all that. So to be honest, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I was just really excited to see The Flash get a solo film. And then a couple of years ago when we got teased that, Michael Keaton's Batman was going to return. And that was my real first, as a kid, introduction to Batman and superheroes, and, made me fall in love with, the stuff that I enjoy today. So, I guess the mashup of nostalgia plus something that I'm currently into with Zack Snyder's Justice League and The Flash, I was just really keen and excited to see how this was going to work out and how they're going to mesh it together. I just wanted to see it happen. And, I've actually been very lucky to see it twice now.
Yes, that's right. So you saw an early cut of the film, I guess you could say, about a month
Yes.
ago from time of recording now and time of release of the movie.
Yes.
What was it like revisiting it and, trying to hold on to those secrets for so long? Assuming you saw a whole lot more of the movie and got a lot more out of it. How would you compare the first and second time seeing the movie?
So yeah, obviously the first time it was just like I didn't know what to expect, and then the second time round I was like anticipating a couple of scenes, and I could pay more attention to what was happening, and not that I missed out on much the first time. It's just I picked up a lot of things the second time. Like if there was any doubts with the movie, I was like, oh, this didn't really play out well. It's not because it didn't play out well. It's just because there was so much, eye candy on the screen and goodness happening that you can get very distracted, and you're like, oh, that was foreshadowing this in the movie. So
Yes.
I enjoyed it a lot. Surprisingly, it wasn't that different from the first edit that I saw. Maybe the last 2 minutes of the movie was left out, which
Yes.
we'll be talking about a little bit later.
We will talk about that.
And then the credits were left out, and the post-credit scene was left out as well. So it was actually weird seeing it, and it's in this extra. It was like a deleted scene, but it's not, because it's the outtake release.
Yes.
Yeah, I enjoyed it the second time round, and I'm keen to see it a third time. It's been a while since I've seen the same movie twice in the cinema. I think the last time that happened was maybe like Endgame or even Infinity War, because normally I'll watch it on the screen and wait for it to come on a streaming platform or buy a physical copy of it. No, I really enjoyed watching it the second time.
Yeah, look, I mean, it just goes to show, and I completely agree, that the rewatch value of this movie is quite high. And it doesn't mean that it makes it a better movie than others that you just one and done, because there are some movies that tonally, thematically are just really heavy, and you're like, I don't think I can go back to that place, but they're excellent pieces of cinema, excellent pieces of art, but this is something like you said, I think you're right. There's so much nuance and good stuff and eye candy on the screen that you blink and you miss it sometimes.
Yeah.
And the whole foreshadowing thing, there's nuance to the story that will kind of maybe click together a bit better on the second time. So while you go off to see it for a third time, I'm keen to see it for a second time to see what I missed along the way. Now, let's talk about the origins of the story itself. Like, I know you're a huge Flash fan in general with the comic books and all the rest of it, because my understanding is that this film is influenced by two seminal works within the comic book canon. So Flash of Two Worlds from the 60s, where a Silver Age Barry, and by the way, mate, none of this really makes sense to me. I don't know what a Silver Age Barry is. So he finds that by vibrating his molecules at a certain frequency, he is transported to another version of Earth where he meets a Golden Age Jay Garrick. And then there's also Flashpoint from only 15 years ago, back in 2011. That was a 5-issue miniseries where Barry Allen wakes to discover that his world has changed, and only he is aware of the difference between his real world and his altered world. So from those really top line insights, the film has clearly paved its own path around some of those ideas. And I think it's found the best way forward, picking this from that from there. And then, of course, because it's part of, as you referenced, the Zack Snyder world of the DCEU, there's some baggage that it has had to deal with and carry forward there. So, but I really think it's found a good balance in finding the right sort of story forward for the audience and the character.
Yeah, so I guess Silver Age, Golden Age, that's just the era of comics, I guess.
Oh, is that right?
So that's just what they've just labeled, that era of comics as Silver Age, Golden Age. And even though it's based, I guess, loosely on a Flashpoint sort of storyline, but I love the fact, and surprisingly enough, Superman growing up was not my favorite superhero.
Right.
The idea of a guy that was indestructible and a rock was his only weakness, to me was just that's rubbish. And, I liked Batman because he was, there was some sort of realism about him. He didn't have superpowers, but, this could be a real thing, as we saw with the Nolan film. But what I liked about Man of Steel, there was some sort of realism to it. And I love the art style and the direction that Zack Snyder went with the film. I remember seeing it in the cinema and going, wow, I absolutely loved. And then from there on, that's when I wanted to know more about Superman, and I did my research and purchased comics around Superman. So that's where that started. But what I love about this film, The Flash, it goes back to that moment sort of like BVS, where we saw, Ben Affleck's Batman, and Metropolis was all falling apart, and Zod and Superman are going at it. We saw what Barry was doing during that time, and we sort of go back to that moment, and Zod's back. I love that. I love how they sort of, I mean, it's that whole Back to the Future thing where Marty McFly goes back in time and stuff. Like, I absolutely love how clever people can be at writing and trying to go through all that sort of like story. I love all that. So you don't really need to know Flashpoint comic book storylines to really appreciate this film. I think if you just love time travel or have a bit of an understanding of some pop culture movies like Back to the Future, you'll be all over this. And of course, there's going to be people that are going to be questioning time travel as they do, but that's part of the fun. I love how people have their own fan theories, and interestingly enough, in this film, they have their own theory about time travel and the spaghetti
bowl.
That's it, which I thought was very clever.
Yes, and made me quite hungry at the time, I have to say. Let's just talk about the time travel piece, because the thing I want to pull out there is that the one thing that I really appreciate about this movie is how they approached the complex time travel and also like the physics of Barry's abilities, and they translated it all into layman's terms. I found it really accessible because I often feel confused or stupid when films go all technical in their explanations. Like, I still have a bleed on my brain after watching Tenet. Like, I still don't understand what I watched, and I watched it twice and I don't know why. So like, I appreciated that The Flash was simple but interesting and accessible, and how it talked about all the concepts that they were putting in front of you. So yeah, that was a positive for little old silly me.
100%. Look, Tenet, I agree with you. Tenet, like, as a film, I enjoyed it, but the last scene and all that, I'm still trying to get my head around it. I mean, I've only seen it once. Like, I like films that are clever and smart, but when you walk out of it and you're trying to explain to someone, or someone's trying to explain to you, oh no, this is what it means, but then they're getting confused and muddled up, and it's just like, well, you don't actually know either. Where this one, and it's as simple as the spaghetti bowl, and Michael Keaton telling, like, it was very clever, and that's all it needs to be. Like, we don't need to know how time travel works. We just need to know how they got there and how it's altering, I guess, the future, let's call it. And I thought they did it a clever way.
Completely agree. Just on the story a little more, like, it is really simple at its core, and it asks this question. If you had the power to travel back in time and save someone, and therefore change the course of your life, would you do it despite the known consequences? It's a matter of heart versus brain and which one wins out in the end. And that's a really compelling question. And that's kind of it. Of course, there's complex layers to this story, but you have Barry, who accidentally finds himself traveling back in time when he runs away from his house, having remembered his life as a kid. So he's in an emotional state. He really loved his mother. His mother really loved him. So he's in this state of longing, and he's just kind of like runs because that's what he can do. What his outlet is, he can run. That's his thing. And what he unlocks is like truly shocking to him. He's like, hold on. It then plants the seed of this decision for him to make that changes everything. Should I, can I, yes, go back and alter the past so I have my mother back in my life? That's simply what he wants to do. He wants to prevent the death of his mother and have his life with her back again, despite the really sound, pointed advice from Bruce Wayne, aka Batfleck, but he does it anyway.
Yes, and we get a little bit of a glimpse at that in the Zack Snyder's Justice League as well, when they're fighting against Steppenwolf as well, because Barry does turn the clock back just a little bit to reverse it.
Does.
Yes, and they sort of make mention about it when Bruce and that are talking at his car. They mention it very, very briefly. So he has dabbled in it, and I like that they bring that together. Like, oh, is Zack Snyder's version of Justice League canon now? But then they also reference stuff that's from the theatrical release version of the Justice League. Yeah, I thought it was very clever. I love all that. But what I like about this film as well, it's not an origin story, but it is an origin story as well. Like, Barry goes back in time and he's got to help his younger self become the Flash. So it's very clever that we just didn't get like this is a prequel, let's call it, before the whole Justice League and Batman vs Superman, we were along the journey as he was guiding his past self to become the Flash. I thought that was very, very clever in getting that as well.
100%, because you're so right. It is not pitched in or really sold as an origin story, but we do get one vicariously because
Yes.
he counters a Barry that hasn't had their powers yet. So in order to try and figure out how to save the universe and get it all back to normal, because he's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
He's like, no, you have to get your powers. It's tonight. So we basically see the emergence of how Barry Allen got his powers, albeit slightly different because it's a different kind of Barry, whatever.
Correct.
But it serves as a plot device, character development piece where you have two Barrys at different points in time with different life experiences. One doesn't know that his mum dies and the other one does and has tried to fix it and inadvertently fucked up everything else. So yeah, it's really clever way that they've kind of woven in an origin story into the mix too.
And we've gotten so many origin stories over the years with these superhero things,
Right.
and they're all the same, right? They're all the same. And how can you tell an origin story differently opposed from like the 30 that we've already gotten over the last maybe 10 years
Probably
or 15
more.
years? Yeah, exactly. So I enjoyed this one for that because it was different. It was something that we hadn't seen before.
Can I ask you a question? Of course, we preface at the top of the episode, spoiler territory. Obviously, Barry's mother dies in this. That's a really like significant part in who he is as a person within the canon of comics and then this movie. We don't ever find out who or who kills her. And I don't know whether that's something like, do you think it's something they're going to explore in a potential sequel? Like, is that a crucial thing? Does Barry ever find out who kills his mum and then he goes into like revenge sort of territory in that space? I'm just curious.
That was the question that I had left the second screening of the Flash, because I thought maybe a post-credit scene was going to set up that, I don't know, like one of Flash's, rogue gallery of villains was the one to do it because of the time travel. I don't know. I guess it's sort of similar to base it off like another film, like Spider-Man 2. I think it's the one, the original with Tobey. When they find his uncle's killer and he goes out to, like they discover who it was, and then I think that was the one that set up number 2 or number 3. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it could potentially.
Which Spider-Man are we talking about? Tobey or Andrew?
I think it's Tobey. I might be getting them confused now.
Fine. There's been so many Spider-Man movies.
I know. But I'm pretty sure that's like what number 2 of Spider-Man was, like how it started, and he went out to go find this person. I'm sure people are going to correct us, which is totally fine. Please
totally
do.
Fine. If you have the answers, let us know.
Yeah. So I would assume that the Flash 2, if there is going to be one, they have said that there is going to be one, but I mean, the movie just came out, so why would they say that, there's no more Flashes and, that's it. But that was definitely the question I had coming out of it. I guess this film is more focusing on him saving his dad, from, getting out of jail and all that. And I guess maybe that's what ties up the next movie. Yeah, so that was definitely a question I had. The answer, I mean, it's changed so many times, I guess, like the backstory of the Flash, so who knows? But I like it when they change it, because it's nice going into something not knowing it, and I feel like a lot of the comic book community are like, oh, that's not canon, that's not how it's meant to be. But it's like, why would you want it to be the same? Make it different, because sometimes not knowing how things are going to play out is more exciting than seeing it play out.
Look, I love that perspective that you come with it, because I was curious about you as being such a comic book fan. That are you wedded to what you've written in canon to be the way you want a story or a character to play out? But you really sound like, no, give me something new. I'm open to it going a different direction to what we may anticipate it. So yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, well, like with the Spider-Man new movie that's out at the moment, the Spider-Verse, there's all these different Spider-Mans, and they've all got different origin stories. So there is no right or wrong way. I just want to be entertained, to be quite honest. And I definitely was with this film.
Are you not entertained? Absolutely.
Exactly.
I kind of sounded a little bit like Bane then, as opposed to Maximus. Yeah, I finished watching The Dark Knight Rises last night, actually, so it's top of mind. People listening and be like, you just sounded nothing like Bane. What are you talking about?
Are you not entertained? Sorry, that was really bad.
Gotham. Hilarious. Do you know what? Like, it's we're going such a tangent, but I always remember like watching The Dark Knight Rises and loving it. I loving that Christopher Nolan trilogy, but I recall Bane's voice being really silly as I remembered it. But when I watched it last night, like I didn't have an issue with it. I don't know whether I've grown to like what he brought to the character, what Tom Hardy brought to the character, but I know we've just been mocking his voice, but it works in the context, and it's utterly terrifying when you think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that was 10 years ago, nearly, right? I think when The Dark
Yeah.
Knight Rises came out. But then everyone was mocking Heath Ledger's Joker before it even happened, and now everyone is just like, do you know what I mean? So the fan base is very fickle, and people will just, jump onto anything. And so, look, like I said, I'm there for a ride, for a journey. I just want to be entertained. That's it. Actually, these days, it's almost like I don't even want to watch trailers. I used to be so hardcore into it, where I used to deep dive and find, not spoilers, but like on-set footage and sort of know what the story's meant to be. Where lately I've been just going to the cinema, maybe watch the first trailer, but going to the cinema and not being spoiled, because sometimes in these trailers you see the whole movie in the trailer and you don't even have to watch the film. So I've been enjoying going to the cinema lately for that reason. So and it might be because I'm a bit older and there's so much content out there now. Right. It's really hard to consume everything. But no, I've been really enjoying my cinema going experiences lately.
Yeah, good. Look, I like that shift in your approach, because I'm more and more leaning into that. It's hard when you have like a podcast like Leah and I have and stuff, where you need to watch the trailers to be able to talk about the movies and what's coming up and all that sort of stuff. But I do try and not overwatch them, or maybe watch the teaser and not like the main thing, because there are some things that marketers put in trailers where, and I actually think that The Flash suffered at the hands of this as well. There were things in the movie, if we can loop it back to the movie that we're talking about, when Michael Keaton, in the Batman, he says, "Let's get nuts." Like, I thought that would have packed such a bigger punch if we hadn't seen that in the trailer. I don't know. It's a fine line. It's a double-edged sword.
I think these trailers they're not aimed towards people that are die-hard movie fans, because we're going to see this movie regardless, whether you're a comic book fan or die-hard movie fan. This is more for the amount of people I know that are like, Michael Keaton, I grew up watching Michael Keaton, I'm in on this film. And it probably got them on the I'm Batman and let's get nuts. Oh, that's my childhood. I'm going to watch this film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
totally.
I get it. And for us, it's like, I totally agree with you. It would have packed a punch even more so. And it's not even one of his, like, it was just such a throwaway line there, let's get nuts, in that first Batman film, right? But I guess everyone in the diehard movie and comic book space just know that line. So it is clever, but that's like BVS. So I know we're jumping around and we're meant to be focusing on the Flash, but BVS, when they showed Doomsday, I was so upset. But why was I upset that they showed it? You know what I mean? Like, I was going to go see the film anyway, but I think surprises are very rare these days. So I like being surprised on the screen, like you were saying before. Yeah.
Totally. Well, we are going to talk, when we get into characters, we're going to talk about all the surprise cameos a little later. So I'm really excited. My fists are clenched with excitement. Yes. But there's one thing in terms of like serving a fan base that I got such a kick out of in this movie. And it helped establish how the universe that Barry realized he was in was different to his, was so simple. And it'll go over some people's heads, but I fucking loved it. It's when they reference that Eric Stoltz is Marty McFly in Back to the Future and not Michael J. Fox.
I got a massive kick out of that,
Oh, that was so good. And I would think that would be something that you would be really, really compelled to put in a trailer. And I'm so glad that they didn't. Just for some history of those that don't know. So Robert Zemeckis cast Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly in Back to the Future. They had started filming. They had done weeks and weeks of principal photography. And Zemeckis, to his credit, and gosh, that would have been a difficult conversation to have with Eric Stoltz and his manager, I can't imagine, he wasn't right for the part. And he recast him when they had started filming with Michael J. Fox. And of course, you can't imagine it with anybody else in the role. But there is footage of Eric Stoltz that they have released of him being Marty McFly. And look, it's not that bad, but obviously we don't have 3 movies worth of Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly. So you can't really tell whether he would really fire in the role. But yeah, I just really liked that part of the movie.
So talking about that now, imagine if you don't know that story, and that
Right.
scene in that movie would just go over your head. Like,
because they keep referencing it. He's like, "What do you
yes,
mean, Eric Stoltz? What are you talking about?"
yes. And I like that they reference it back to the future to sort of help explain, time travel and all that sort of
Mhm.
stuff. But yeah, that was interesting. Also, spoilers as well. They mentioned like Kevin Bacon, but like Footloose, and they're like, no,
Oh
no, no,
yeah.
Kevin Bacon volleyball scene in Top Gun, and they're just like, what? Like, I love how Barry's
Yes.
decision to go back in time has altered everyone's movie career choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great. It's very, very clever.
It is. It plays into that what if space, which time travel does, and what Barry's
Yeah.
like. What if my mother wasn't killed? What would happen? So,
Mm.
what if Kevin Bacon was Maverick in Top
Maverick.
Gun? You know,
Yeah.
all these things. Oh, who was originally looking at being cast as Indiana Jones? What was his name?
Oh no, you're gonna be
Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh
Yes,
gosh. Anyway, we will go down another rabbit hole if we keep going here.
Tom Selleck. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, bizarre. But yeah, maybe in an alternate universe. I want to talk about the length of the movie just from a pace perspective. So this bad boy is 2 hours and 24 minutes long. Did you feel the runtime? How was your relationship with the length of the movie? And I guess especially because you've seen it twice.
I love long movies. Let's
Mhm.
say if I'm going to a cinema, I like a long movie as long as it makes sense for the movie to be long. If they're just putting in
Correct.
stuff there to just to fill it out,
Mm.
I can go, okay, you can cut, certain scenes out. But second time around, I thought like a lot of the scenes were important. I like that we had Flash introduced at the beginning, and we had a couple of cameos at the beginning as well from
Yeah.
the Justice League. And then maybe like an hour into it, then we get introduced to Michael Keaton's Batman.
It's quite far in.
Yeah, and then maybe half an hour later, then we get introduced to Supergirl. Zod gets introduced quite early, but then we see Zod later on in the film, and
Yeah.
then this whole like cameo like goodness happens, in the last half hour. I thought the timing was good, and I thought the pacing was great. I didn't go on my phone the second time around, if that makes sense. Like when I was watching the film, it wasn't like, oh, I just want this film to be over and move on,
Mhm.
sort of distract myself. I was enjoying it, and I guess that helps with the great acting involved as well. Like there's
Yeah.
two Barrys on the screen, so that means
Yes.
there's two Ezras, and they're totally different. And I just thought Ezra's performances were they're totally different from each other, and I thought they were very, very clever, and it just really shows off their acting chops. I didn't feel like it went too long. My
Mm.
partner would probably say it went on for an hour too long because she likes films that only go for 90 minutes. But
Yeah,
no,
sure.
I enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Look, I'm with you. I loved the pace of the movie and I didn't feel its length. And I'm very vocal on the podcast about movies being so damn long these days unnecessarily,
Yes.
especially in the superhero genre, I feel. And there's definitely, I come out going, oh, there could have been 15, 20 minutes trimmed here or there. And I mean, maybe The Flash could have been tighter in some aspects. Maybe
Yeah.
we could have got to certain milestones in the story a little faster, but I was having so much fun with the
Fun.
characters that I wanted to stay there. And I think that's a real testament to the writing and also the direction, and throw in, the editors into the mix too. So I'm with you on that. I didn't really have much of an issue with its pace or length. But let's talk about the characters and performance. Let's talk about Ezra Miller and their performance because, as you mentioned, they basically had to shoot the film twice, which is extraordinary. What an incredible actor they are. And they finally got the chance to bring this beloved character to life outside of the sort of janitor of the Justice League, as he refers to himself as cleaning up the batmess
The mess.
yeah,
Yeah.
the batmess of it all. So finally got room to breathe here, and Ezra Miller brought it, didn't they?
Look, not that we need to go into all the stuff that's happened and why the film got delayed,
Sure.
but I can understand why Warner Brothers didn't want to recast the Flash and Barry Allen's, role. I guess Ezra is a phenomenal actor, and I was very lucky to meet Ezra back in 2017, maybe
Did
for the
you?
Fantastic Beasts. Yes, I got to sit down, half an hour interview. I'm going to reshare it on my social, so definitely check
Please
it out.
do.
And I was very lucky to be able to chat a bit about the Justice League and the Flash. And Ezra was in, like, I guess, pre-production of the Flash at the time, and they were very excited to venture off and show the world what Warner Brothers and everyone was involved was working on. So yeah, I guess that's why I feel like I've been, not that I had any involvement at all. I've been very lucky to work with Warner Brothers with doing interviews or with the DC fandom stuff. So I feel like I have been somewhat a part of helping getting the message out there for the film.
Of course.
Loved Ezra's performance overall, and I hope people don't go, I'm not going to go see that film because of what's happened in the past, because my goodness, the actors like Robert Downey Jr.'s, past and all that sort of stuff, and everything pre-social media. I'm sure if there was, all these great actors in the past, if they had a social media presence back then, they wouldn't be, I would imagine. Not that I know, but I guess, everyone, as long as they're getting help and everyone deserves a second chance and all that, but everyone needs to see this film. Don't read what other people are talking about, and don't boycott the film. Definitely go see it and see it on the big screen, because it is just visually impressive, and it's a great story. It's a fun story. Action, comedy, the humor was fantastic. I love that the humor wasn't babyish. It was clever, it was fun, it was witty, and that all plays in part with Ezra's performance. The serious Barry, we saw Barry very, funny and a bit annoying in the Justice League, but he had grown up, and I guess real world stuff has affected him, and then he had to deal with his past self. It was a bit annoying, and he realized how annoying he was in the past. So clever, absolutely love it. I hope that answered your question, Tim.
Oh yeah, totally. Just on the whole the Barry back and forth here, because the writers found a way to make each of the two Barrys feel really distinct to each other.
Different, yeah.
And that their friendship that they ultimately, foster, it feels relatable. But it's like Barry is kind of maybe realizing how annoying he is. And so that kind of levels him out a bit, because it's like his annoying little brother, but he's like, no, actually, it's not my little brother. It's me. I'm seeing me be this really immature, happy-go-lucky kid. He doesn't actually understand what's at stake here, but he hasn't had the life experience, the lived experience that the other barriers had. But it's funny because, and this is something that happens in superhero movies all the time, it is just what it is. Barry is the reason we have such a shit show on our hands. There's not necessarily a villain in this movie. I mean, Zod is a villain, but he's not really he hasn't caused the problem. He is a problem that they encounter along the way, but he hasn't caused anything. So it's the age-old thing that superheroes tend to make things worse before they get better. Right? Yeah, it's just wild.
And I love that superheroes they're human, I guess, if you know, like what I'm trying to say. They have human problems and qualities, and it's a real question. I'm sure that a lot of people can, gravitate towards and relate to. Like, if you had the opportunity to bring a loved one back from the past, would you do it? And what are you willing to sacrifice to make that happen? And I love when there's some sort of realism built into it, instead of just the hero being right and, all the time. Like, they do come across struggles like everyone else every day, with work or life. Like, we all have these, sort of decisions that we have to make that can change our futures. Love it. Great film. Great film.
Now, do we want to talk about a little bit more Bruce Wayne Batman, aka Michael Keaton? The Batman, he is back. He was definitely and still is my favorite Batman. Put you on the spot. Is he your favorite Batman, or do you have a favorite Batman within the movies that have come out over the decades?
It's easy to say that he's my favorite Batman because I just saw the film, right? But Nolan's Batman with Christian Bale, I love how realistic it was, right? But Michael Keaton's Batman was really the Batman that got me into superheroes and growing up, playing with the action figures and reading the comics, the movie comics, let's say, and playing the games on my Sega Mega Drive. That was what really got me to love Batman and Michael Keaton's Batman. And it's great that Michael Keaton still has it, not just from he's such a fantastic actor. I guess with Birdman a couple of years ago when that came out. Brilliant. And we've seen him in Spider-Man Homecoming. So it's great to see him back with the cowl on. The action scenes were great, and I love that it was still true to the old school Batman that we grew up watching. And I still love that he still had the quirks of the old school tech where he had to measure how much he had to charge the detonator. I thought that was hilarious, because I guess in the film well, in the story of the movie, he's a retired Batman. He hasn't been doing this because Gotham has been a good place. There hasn't been any,
it's a
crime.
safe place now. Yep.
Yeah, and he's retired, so he hasn't been Batman in a long time, and he puts it on, and he loves getting back into it, and it's sort of like he missed it, and it made him feel young again. So, yeah, Michael Keaton, fantastic performance, and I'm glad that he said yes, and I'm glad whoever decided to bring Michael Keaton Batman back into the story. I thought it was very, very well done. It wasn't just like let's insert him here. It made sense. Yeah, so yeah, very clever.
100%. I mean, Keaton he came into the role effortlessly charismatic, like he always is. And I was grinning from ear to ear watching him return in probably his most beloved role for some 30 plus years. And you said like he's retired, like he also retired the razor and the clippers because he's quite a disheveled Bruce Wayne, isn't he? He's got long hair and the beard and wears sandals or one sandal at a time or whatever. That really bothered me. I just like, he's only got one shoe on, like put the other one on.
He's a hermit. He's living in his mansion by himself. He has no butler. He has no, like, it looks like Wayne Manor is just collecting dust. It'll be interesting to know what he has been doing because it doesn't look like he's living his playboy lifestyle and whether he has kids or whatever like that. But who knows? Like, if a Flash 2 happens, does Michael Keaton's Batman return or like, I don't know. Like, who knows, right?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. I just want to call out something you mentioned before. Like his physicality was so fucking cool to see as well.
Yeah.
And his humor, really quick-witted, but then seeing him play as a leader and leading the team with Barry too, like all the smarts the Batman brings, all the ingredients we love about Batman and Keaton's version were all there, and they were really nurtured by the creative team. So I was kind of worried that the essence of Keaton's Batman might get lost within the spectacle of it all, but it was purely intact.
Yes, and also a lot of the symbols that goes with Keaton's Batman as well, like the Batmobile. That was a cool reveal.
Yeah.
Not that he actually used it in the film.
No, he didn't. That's a shame.
Yeah, but I guess like with the Batwing, that helped them get to a lot of locations, let's call it.
A bit more practical, I think.
Yes, yeah. So that made sense, but I wish we got to see maybe the Batmobile sort of shoot the hook and it goes up on the wall. And I just remember that scene with the Batmobile just going boom and going up the wall. It was just, so hammy, but like, it's fine. Like those are these things that I remember, but
I love a bit of ham. I love a bit of hammy stuff.
Definitely.
Lay it on me. I think the only thing that his Batmobile was used for was for the young Barry to have a nap.
And for the teaser trailer too. Well, we actually didn't see it in the teaser trailer, but we saw the outline with the cloth on it as well. So
correct.
They're all clever shots and all that. And I guess, Barry mentions in the film, I remember as a kid seeing this on the TV screen driving around. Like, that's cool moments because I did too, but not on, the news. I remember seeing it on, in the movie, on the VHS when I used to watch it.
No, Batman's real. Batman's real. What are you talking about, Jay? What are you talking about? I really want to talk about Supergirl, Sasha Calle. I loved her character and performance, and I really, really hope we get more of her in James Gunn's DCU because there is so much to uncover and explore in her character. When we're introduced to her, she has no home. She thought she was heading to Earth for safety, but was then imprisoned and suffered a lot of pain as a result. And as a result of that, she has such a twisted but accurate, I guess, take on humans and humanity. And it takes Barry to kind of lift the curtain on the heart that humans can bring and what they're there to do to save people and show love and support. But she'd never felt that before. So I really liked the complex layers of her character and a brilliant performance from Sasha.
Sasha was great. And it sounds like from the story and what I sort of gathered from it is that she was sent to protect Clark Kent Jor-El's character, but then Zod intercepts that and then she came to Earth. And I guess it sounds like she was imprisoned straight away.
Yeah, it does.
So therefore, she would have been mistreated the whole time while she was there. And I can understand her hatred towards the humans. So, and I guess because she was shown compassion and all that sort of stuff. That's great. And that's a great sort of like story arc for Barry to go on as well to help her find that. Looks like there was a little bit of like a love interest between young Barry and like when he was trying to film her on the phone and he was like looking at her and stuff like that, which was pretty cool. This is a spoiler review, but like that there was no payoff of that. And one of the things that not that I didn't like with the film, because I guess it wasn't needed, but once we went back into the Speed Force, we didn't see Michael Keaton, or we didn't see, Sasha's Supergirl again for the rest of the film. Like, we just see them meet their demise multiple times. But yeah, I guess, it didn't really need to pay off, because
they made it really clear they had been killed in that version of the universe. And so
correct.
you're right. Even though you wanted to see more of them because they were so good,
Yes.
it actually wouldn't have made sense for them in the context of this movie and the bookends of it all, like that they did show up again in some way. But I mean, you clearly yearned for their characters and their performances. So
Yes.
I totally hear what you're saying. It would have been good to have them come back in some way, but I guess it just shows the stakes of the movie, that like sometimes in universes there's things that need to happen, and they were both killed, and that was that. So,
and that's that. And realistically, Barry's character would never see them again because of that. And that's, I guess, another sacrifice that plays out in it. But in terms of Sasha's performance, great, really, really good. A Latino playing Supergirl, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Love it.
And she doesn't look like what Supergirl looked like in the comics. I think Supergirl was, blue-eyed blonde hair, but Sasha looked like she could hit someone and cause some damage to Zod. Do you know what I mean? And she had that good intensity. So I'd love to see her back on the screen in some capacity as Supergirl again.
100%. Are there any other characters that you kind of want to call out and talk about, or should we dive into some of the cameos that we were exposed to across the movie?
Zod being back, love Zod. Michael Shannon, right?
Correct.
He's an incredible actor, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like Man of Steel. And it was great to see him back on the screen. I might be pronouncing this wrong, but one of Zod's henchmen is called Fiora. She was the female soldier, and I loved her in Man of Steel, and she has a really good talking about someone that has a lot of intensity. She was fantastic in Man of Steel. Not a main character, definitely supporting character, and we see her in this film as well. So I think that was really cool that they had put her in the film. I marked out when I saw her on the screen. Affleck at the beginning.
Yeah.
It was cool that we got to see Wonder Woman as well at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah. I'm hoping that Gal Gadot, because she showed up in a really weird cameo in the Shazam Fury of the Gods one, and then I loved her cameo in this, but I'm like, she's too good. Stop using her as a cameo. Like, give her more to do. Like, I just don't want her Wonder Woman to come to an end, but we really don't know the path forward with some of these characters and the actors playing them, do we? We know some, but not all.
Well, I guess it depends on how this movie plays out, and if it does what it does, globally in terms of money made. I guess it really, really depends. Also, we saw Tamura Morrison, who plays Thomas Curry, who's Aquaman's dad. We got to see him on the phone in the scene there, and that was pretty fun.
Well, I really miss Nicole Kidman though in that, because she, I was like, oh my God, is Nicole got a cameo? And I'm a massive Nicole Kidman fan. Honestly, since childhood, utterly, embarrassingly obsessed with that wonderful woman.
And that's interesting as well, because she plays Aquaman's mother, but then she's also in the Val Kilmer Batman Forever. She plays Chase Meridian. I only just realized that once you said Nicole Kidman. How interesting that would have played out. But I'm trying to obviously we're leaving out a lot of cameos that made a really big impact.
We have Christopher Reeve's Superman and Helen Slater's Supergirl. So my understanding is they were archival footage, of course, because Christopher Reeve is no longer with us, and Helen Slater is, I think Supergirl was the early 80s, so it's quite some time ago.
Correct, yeah.
The one that I really, well, actually there's two, but I'm going to start with Nicolas Cage as Superman. In the infamous story, because for those that don't know, you're like, what do you mean Nicolas Cage cameoed in The Flash? Who was he? So Superman. And Tim Burton was making a Superman movie called Superman Lives back in the mid-90s, I believe. They got far in, there's all this concept art, and there is footage, and there's a documentary which I haven't watched yet. There's a documentary about the making of, or the lack of making of, this movie. It's meant to be really, really excellent.
Oh,
and
okay.
They had done screen tests of the costume of Nicolas Cage in Superman. There's three roles that Nick Cage has always wanted to play in his career. There's Dracula, which he has recently done in Renfield, and he's excellent in it. Captain Nemo as well.
Oh,
and that's, I think, I could be getting this wrong. Is it 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's something like that. Yeah,
Yeah, and also Superman. I mean, he named his child,
Kal-El or
yeah,
Jor-El.
Kal-El. His son is
Kal-El.
called Kal-El, for
Yeah.
God's sake. As fate determined, his Superman never lived. The project was cancelled. And so when he shows up as a version of Superman in this movie, I was freaking out. I thought, this is awesome. But I had a problem with it, Jay, because it
Yeah.
wasn't Nick Cage. It was a CGI Nick Cage. And that really fucking bothered me. I'm thinking, if you are going to deliver such a really sick cameo and making this piece a part of canon now, even though the film doesn't exist, get the real actor. Like,
Yeah.
it really annoyed me.
Okay, that's interesting because I guess would you want to see Nick Cage? The answer is probably yes. Would you want to see Nick Cage today in the Superman suit from the mid-90s fighting that giant spider? And that's the other thing. Like, it's such a really nerdy cameo to have because it's not
So nerdy.
canon.
Yeah.
A lot of people will be leaving the cinema going,
What the fuck?
what's Nick Cage fighting a spider for with
Yeah.
long hair? And like,
Yeah.
but you know what? Like sometimes, like I guess with the younger generation, that's what starts the younger generation to go, oh, I wonder what that was about. I'm going to deep dive into it. And then their love of like, oh, wow, this backstory. And then I guess that's what builds a passion for cinema and history and moving forward. So it's a fan service, and it's also, I guess, creating a lot of new fans as well. But look, I didn't mind that it wasn't Nick Cage. Obviously, they would have had to have asked for the likeness,
Totally.
and I don't know if he would have done the motion capture for that scene. Let's say, I mean, it would have been nice for him to at least do that, but I guess we'll find that out a little bit later. But
yeah,
I thought it was a really cool cameo.
I loved it. I just don't think the execution was there, sadly. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
Hey,
that's just my
Flash
take.
2, he might come, might be Michael B. Keaton, and do you know what I mean? Like, who knows? Who knows?
Oh, see, the possibilities are endless. That's the thing with the multiverse and where they're heading. Gee, isn't multiverse? I can't believe we haven't even referenced this. The multiverse is just the only thing Hollywood are making right now. Like, it's just
every movie,
it's everywhere. And so with that statement, like, I actually think this movie did a really good job despite all the noise around multiverse and everyone fucking trying to do it. I think they achieved it better than what the MCU is attempting to do right now.
I would agree with that. I feel like, I mean, it's hard to go to the cinema now, especially after watching Infinity War and Endgame, because having all those characters on the screen, and not that that's the multiverse, but having all those characters on the screen, we were so spoilt as a fans and an audience to get all that. And it was really hard to go to movies and getting that feeling again of like when I went to watch, sorry, we're going way back now, but getting a feeling from watching a film like Toy Story 3, like I bawled my eyes out twice watching that movie. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure there's been other films, Pixar do that all the time, but, and leaving a cinema going, oh my goodness, like that was such an event, which is amazing. But after Endgame, it's been really hard to get that feeling
again
back and that excitement and to go back and watch it again. And I'm sure there has been maybe a couple of films since then, but definitely with The Flash, I left going satisfied. That was amazing. I can't wait to see where this goes again. And I can't wait to see this a second time or even a third time. So with the multiverse, and it's not just superhero movies, there's other franchises that are trying to, expand their world as well. They're very reliant of like, oh, this character from this universe is going to help out, and if this character dies, it's okay because we can bring them from this timeline, and then it's all good. So technically, nobody really dies because we can just grab them from another multiverse.
They try and let's just talk about that for a second, because they try and tell you the stakes are really high, quote unquote Avengers level threat sort of thing, sort of vibes.
Yep.
But when you do play in the multiverse, which is endless, it's like, oh, well, anything can happen. Anyone can come back. And does it just dilute the stakes a little too much? So it's a really fine line for writers and creators to walk, because you still need to excite people. You still need to deliver a story and ultimately have a threat and a payoff and stuff. And it's really hard to get that right when you can basically say that anyone can come back or whatever, or be experienced in another timeline. It kind of removes the impact that the death of a character may have had at one point in time, because we're kind of getting another version of them somewhere else. So yeah,
Yes.
I don't know. That's a whole like other episode to kind of unpack, right? In of
100%.
itself.
100%. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just really curious to see where like the DCU is going to head in this space. Obviously, where the MCU and I mean, their whole, it's called the multiverse saga, for goodness sake. Like, they're leaning into that whole thing hard, and I just don't think they're getting it right. But anyway, we're talking about the DC, not the MCU.
The
So
Flash, that's it.
Stay on track. I do want to round out a couple more cameos. So we saw some archival footage of Adam West and Burt Ward playing, the 60s Batman TV series. Fucking unbelievable. One of my favorite like moments in pop culture is the shark repellent spray when the shark's on his leg.
Yes.
Hanging off.
I've actually got my Hot Toys Adam
Actually?
West up there, and he's holding the
my God.
the shark repellent.
Shark repellent
I remember
spray.
watching that episode, and not that I was around when that aired properly, but I remember watching
what? You weren't alive in the 60s, Jay?
I don't want to say I remember watching this as a kid, but I wasn't around that time. But I remember the episode ended. How's he going to get out of this one? And then the next episode started with a spray, and I'm like, of course, like clever writing, isn't it? But that's the campiness that suits that show. Like, it's just so good. I don't want to send you off on another tangent because I'm very good at.
I would love to go on an Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman 60s TV series movie tangent. But speaking of camp, now this is the thing I assume was missing from the first version of the movie that you saw, was the cameo of George Clooney, right?
Okay, yeah.
As Bruce Wayne at the end of the movie. And I'm getting chills right now because he played Batman Bruce Wayne in 1997's Batman and Robin and has profusely apologized for that film ever since.
Poor guy.
And I fucking love Batman and Robin. I do remember going to see it in the cinemas and thinking it was the greatest thing ever because I was like 8 or something. I don't know how old I was. But it's actually aged quite well. It is a real camp romp, like horny homoerotic movie that you just go for the ride, like Arnie Uma Thurman. Like, it's just unreal. So I loved the fact that they asked him and he agreed to like reprise his role as Bruce Wayne. We didn't see him in the cowl yet, but what that means, I have so many fucking questions, Jay, about this, because Barry had obviously reset. He made the decision that he wasn't going to save his mother. He had to put the universe all back together. But he made a slight change in order to prove the innocence of his father, who was wrongfully convicted for his mother's death. So he still tweaked something in the past ever so slightly.
Yeah.
So he really, really didn't learn his lesson. But then what that meant was that Batfleck was gone and it's George Clooney. But so does that mean that, like, are we going to get George Clooney as Batman moving forward in that particular timeline? Like, I just want to know.
And does that mean Chris O'Donnell is Robin as well? Or is this like a different, And look, I loved Batman and Robin as a kid. And then, of course, I was part of that, because apparently Batman and Robin killed the whole superhero franchise and they didn't want to revisit it.
It kind of did for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time. But you know what? It was probably good because the technology wasn't really there to get like these Avenger movies or these big epics as well. But when you watch it back, you could tell that that's what the film was going for. It wasn't like they tried to make this magnificent masterpiece, but it came out hokey. That's what they wanted. And Joel Schumacher, is it Joel Schumacher?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, he directed it. Yeah.
Directed it and he was the director of Batman Forever, which Val Kilmer would have been great to see as Bruce Wayne at the end, but obviously the stuff that Val's going through, he physically can't do that. Yeah. But it was cool to see George. I was wondering if they were going to cast a new Bruce Wayne for the new DC. I was wondering because like the first time we saw the film, we saw the shoes step out of the car.
Oh, is that what you saw? Okay.
Yes, and then we see Barry go, who are you? And then it just cut out.
Oh my God.
And apparently on location when they were filming that, this is what one of my friends was telling me, apparently it was Michael Keaton. He was just filling in and stepping out. And apparently afterwards they got Clooney to, green screen him in and all that. So
okay, I was wondering how they did that. That is actually really, really well done because because it looked really exposed in the public, and I'm thinking, how did they have a close set for this moment?
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess all the close-ups of Clooney, that would have been on a green screen, I guess. But who knows how late into the game, like we're meant to see a Batgirl come on HBO Max, and that got canned. It got shelved.
canned. The movie got canned. Yeah.
Yeah, and Michael Keaton was meant to be a big role in that film as well. So
That's right.
I wonder who was it meant to be Keaton at the end of that, or have they now just recast it? So there's all these different questions, and I'm sure it will all come out eventually. But yeah, it's just interesting to see what the direction was meant to be, and then how the movie ends as well with Aquaman at the end with
Yeah, that
Barry's
was
character.
weird. What did you think of that mid-credit scene?
I
That was a
I
bloody pointless piece for me.
I was expecting maybe a Blue Beetle
Yeah,
little like Easter egg because that's the next
that's the
DC
next
film
one
coming out.
in August. Yep.
Yes, but then of course we still got the second Aquaman coming out as well.
And Ben Affleck is in that, right? So I have so many questions, no answers, and I'm going mad.
I don't know now because they've flip flopped so many times.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck was part of the reshoots. What
Yes.
I last heard of it is that now that's not even going to be in the film.
Oh,
I mean, this
actually.
Aquaman. Well, I don't
Oh.
know because it's just so flip flop, and apparently the movie's unwatchable, and it's not testing
Jesus.
well. But then now it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to believe. I'm excited to see it just to see what is going on and how this pays out and
Yeah.
how this connects to the rest of James Gunn's, DCU.
Yeah.
But yeah, the last scene in the film, they're coming out of a bar. Aquaman is drunk, and apparently, like, the law is meant to be that Aquaman can't get drunk because he's a metahuman.
Yeah.
So, and then he obviously falls face first into a puddle of water, and he'll be fine because he can breathe. But then there was like rumors a while ago that he's going to be recast as a villain. He's going to play Lobo.
Yes, that's right. Jason Momoa.
Yeah, is that a touch that he's going to be Lobo? But then he talks about his ring and that it is Atlantean and stuff. So I was so confused with that last. It didn't really play into anything. It just showed that Aquaman is part of his world still, and that's the storyline that we're going with. But who knows? Who knows?
Friggin' worlds collide indeed.
Collide, literally, yeah.
Who knows what's going on? But like you said, hopefully there's a payoff and some continuity and explanation is thrown into the mix with Blue Beetle, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and then what we get after that, my understanding is Superman Legacy. So a whole new sort of kickoff of the DCU, kissing the Snyderverse goodbye. I want to talk about the special effects because this was an area of the movie where I had some serious
Problems
criticism. Yeah.
Yes.
And stuff has come out since that I've seen the movie that I want to talk about where the director has like tried to justify it. So like when the effects were good, they were great. Like the opening action sequence that you referenced at the top of the episode, that was awesome. But when they were bad, they were so bad. So this is the quote from Andy Muschietti. He gave an interview with Gizmodo in response to the criticism out there, like really, really valid criticism on the shoddy special effects. He said, everything is distorted in terms of lights and textures. We entered this water world, which is basically being in Barry's point of view. It was and by the way, listener, you've obviously seen the movie because it's spoilers and we gave you that heads up, but I don't understand what he means by Waterworld because they didn't go to fucking Waterworld. Anyway, it was part of the design. So if it looks a little weird to you, that was intended. I don't think so, mate.
Tim, remember at the beginning of the film when I said to you, I saw the first edit.
That's right,
and
I remember.
Some of the CGI was a bit off. So hopefully they fix it in this film. Yeah. And they didn't fix it.
They didn't.
Yes.
So basically the areas that looked really, really uncanny valley was because you had two Barrys, right? And some of the shots, like even when they're in the same frame together or even separate frames, it looked worse than a Snapchat filter. Like it did not look like Ezra Miller. And I bring it down to this. This is my hot take on it. This is my speculation. They obviously had a lot of reshoots and whatever. This movie has been in development hell and there's been all sorts of things going on and we've waited a long time for it. I just simply don't think they weren't able to get Ezra Miller to do pickup shots and things like that based on their circumstance. And so they just had to go down the CGI road to fill in gaps of dialogue and such like. But they did it so poorly.
Yeah.
It really took me out of the movie. And like, fuck me. Okay, what's your take on all of this?
I 100% agree. It took me out of the movie the first time as well.
Yeah.
Especially in the Speed Force. I was saying to you, like, oh, there's a character in it and they were CG'd and I don't know why they just didn't use the character.
Right?
But the whole Speed Force scene, it looked like and I don't want to say PS2 quality graphics, let's say PS3 quality graphics.
It's kind of you.
Yeah, the second time round, I was what the hell? Like, I was like, oh, okay, so they didn't fix that. But then at the same time, it doesn't really hurt the story.
You're right.
It takes you out of the movie just a little bit, going,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this movie is meant to be like this mega blockbuster film, and we've seen other movies manage to do this stuff and pull it off quite easily. But I mean, you said it before, maybe they didn't have the option with Ezra to do that stuff because of what was happening in the background.
Yeah.
But then after, like, I guess because it was the second time around, I just accepted it and just moved on, and I enjoyed the film for what it was. So maybe the first time round, I was like, but the action scenes were fantastic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were, it was just the Speed Force and some of the mapping of Barry's younger character on the face. It was a little bit jarring. But look, I sort of don't like when people say, oh, the CGI was lousy, so this film is rubbish, it's shit. And it's just like, no, like, that's just one aspect. And like, I was watching, sorry to go on another film, but I was watching Casino with De Niro and Joe Pesci, and there's a scene right at the beginning, and I know this is an old film, but there's a scene right at the beginning where somebody gets blown up in the car, and for a split second you can tell that it is a mannequin in the car, and then that blows up, right? But that doesn't wreck the film. That doesn't wreck the film, and I never hear anyone going, no, that film's shit because of that one little scene that happens for a second. But it's clear as day that they've swapped out De Niro and put a mannequin in there, and he blows up, right?
I'm glad they swapped De Niro out for a mannequin blowing up the car.
Yes. I know, but it's so clear that it's a mannequin, and that didn't wreck the film. So what I'm trying to say, like, even though like these CGI things happen, it doesn't really wreck the film and the story and how it plays out. It's just like these little things. But I wish they got it right so people wouldn't talk about it. But we definitely have to talk about it because I guess CGI is such a big part of this film as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you spend $220 million making a movie, you think they'd be able to map a digital face. Yeah, get on top of it there. But anyway, that's the reality of it. So you'll either love it or hate it in that essence. But as you said, I completely agree. It shouldn't.
Did you get, sorry to cut you off there, but it sounds like you saw it happen and you're just like, oh, but were you able to go, okay, that's just what it is and I can enjoy the rest of the film? Or did every time it pop up sort of take you out of the story?
To be honest, I was always able to get back into the story. I was always able to get back in, but every time it showed up, it took me out. It took me out, unfortunately.
Fair enough.
Because I totally appreciate the complexities of making movies, but I found some of those results a little unacceptable, especially because they got so many other visual elements of the movie so right.
Spot on.
And I'm thinking, how could you sign off on that? Like, I don't know. Maybe it was a rush job in the end, which sounds bizarre considering how long this movie has been coming. But anyway,
they had an extra year, right?
Had an extra year. Maybe that's what made it worse. They spent too much time on it, and it did the opposite.
Could be. Yeah. But look, Andy, he came out and said it was a stylistic choice, so let's just take it as that. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
The Waterworld.
The Waterworld. Where was Kevin Costner?
Yeah. Oh God, could you imagine if he just made? Oh, actually, he could have made it.
Yeah, he could have actually.
Superman's dad. That's right. So
there's been so many superhero movies that you can name any big actor from the last 30 years, and they've probably been in one. So yeah, Kevin Costner was Superman's dad. There you go. Back in Man of Steel.
That's right.
I do want to quickly talk about some of the other visual elements. Like, I fucking love the costumes in this movie, especially Supergirl's. I was obsessed with how that was shaped and the colors and the textures of it. And it just offered some sort of grace and power to her performance as well. And Barry Allen's costume was just like chef's kiss. I just friggin' loved how that looked and actually like functioned in the space too. Yeah, I can't fault any of the costumes. Actually, I think they got that so right across the board.
I like how Supergirl's suit is the same style as the Henry Cavill suit that we've loved over the last couple of films, but it also had a unique style with the red across the top. That it wasn't a skirt. It was still very, like, you know, it was strong. It was great.
Yeah.
And with the Flash suit, I'm sure you would have picked up on this as well, but in the Justice League movies, the lightning that was coming out of Barry was blue, where in this movie it was yellow.
Oh.
And they still carried that trend as well. So young Barry still has blue lightning coming off him, but apparently the suit that the timeline Barry that we know, his suit apparently conducts the electricity and turns it into yellow, like with the yellow pulsing going through his suit and all that, which is meant to be Wayne technology or something like that. So
Oh, okay. They do reference
yeah,
that, don't they, as like a passing comment in the movie at some point?
it's passing at the beginning or
Yeah.
something like that, but they don't really explain the lightning and the color and all that sort of stuff. But apparently, the suit is turning it yellow, which I guess if you read the comics, it's always been a yellow. I mean, his logo is a yellow lightning bolt, so it was cool to see that play out on the screen and explain. It wasn't really explained in the film, but that's what it's meant to be. The costume is meant to be turning it yellow. Yeah.
There you go. Thanks for plugging those gaps of knowledge for me, and I'm
That's all
sure
right.
a few others listening.
And Michael Keaton has a black, so I'm looking at my hot toys behind me, has a black belt in the film where he's meant to have a yellow utility belt from the old school. So I like the little changes that they've done as well. I thought all the suits were just really, really spot on, and I'm looking forward to seeing people cosplay the heck out of them.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
going to be insane. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You included, though, right? Like, are you going to...
I want to get a Flash suit, 100%, and I want it to be pulsing with the lights and stuff
fuck
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, so maybe one day. It's a rubber suit, so I don't know how that's going to be really play out properly and how I'd get into it.
Yeah, you'll live in it for the rest of your days. Or you'll just get vacuum sealed in it like Michelle Pfeiffer did in Catwoman. And
Yes,
like,
yes.
This is my life now. I'm never getting out of this.
But yeah, stay tuned.
Why don't you, if The Flash gets a sequel, why don't you commit right now to wearing something like that on the red carpet of The Flash 2? Done.
He'll probably have a new suit by then.
Oh, you would have spent all this time pulling this suit together and it's a whole new one. You'd be like, shit.
That's all right. Look, I love the suit. And I can't wait to buy merchandise and Hot Toys figures so I can display it in all its glory. I thought it was a great suit.
One of the other things of the movie from a technical perspective in building the whole world, I loved the music in the movie. It was like truly epic. The interwoven orchestral themes of, Danny Elfman's Batman score from 1989, used to nostalgic perfection, for lack of a different statement. Every time Michael Keaton was, kicking goals on the screen, I just found the sound of this movie really, really exciting, and it just played in with the action and adventure tone of the movie too.
100%. Just hearing that Danny Elfman play and just to see the bat cowl on the screen meshed at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh,
goosebumps.
yeah. But then also just like the soundtrack scores that they picked throughout the film, I thought they were really clever, and it was good. Actually, I've added a lot of songs to my playlist on my phone now.
Yeah.
What's the one where Barry gets his powers for the first time and he's running through the streets and he steals the guy's hot dog or whatever he's eating?
I know.
Oh my goodness, I can't remember the song now.
I can't help you.
Young, we are free.
Gosh.
Be all right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Be all right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've added that to my playlist and I listen to it every day since. So yeah, very, very great music choices.
Now, is there anything else about The Flash that's on the tip of your tongue you want to talk about that we may have missed and you'd like, no, I definitely want to bring this up? Or do we want to give our little wrap up of the movie and our rating out of 5 popcorn kernels?
I think we've mentioned everything. Dark Flash. We haven't really talked about the Dark Flash in the Speed Force and that scene. And the second time round, because I was like, how did Barry end up in the timeline where he has to help himself become the Flash? Like that was, by luck that happened there. But I missed it the first time, but the second time, apparently the Dark Flash said, I chose to push you out at that certain moment to help me become. And how I took it, and I know a lot of people have interpreted it differently, but I'm pretty sure the young Barry is meant to be the Dark Flash trying to go round and round and round again to try and save Batman, Michael Keaton's Batman, and Supergirl, and also help save his mother in the future as well.
Yes.
And I guess that's where it ties in with that love interest thing, because why is he so determined to save Supergirl? I guess when she dies by Zod, that's when he runs so fast and gets into the Speed Force and then keeps going back around. He gets all these like blades and all that thrust upon him because I guess all Zod's henchmen have been attacking him, and then eventually over the years he becomes old and he becomes really decrepit and evil, let's call it, and so consumed of trying to save these two people around him, and especially his mother. One scene now that we're talking about, one scene that I really want to talk about is the final scene where the main Barry is back in time and he sees his mother at the shopping or the supermarket, and he takes the tin of tomatoes out of her cart
Yeah.
And that really just shows off Ezra's chops as an actor. Like, oh my goodness, it's like afterwards it makes you want to go hug your mother or your
Right.
loved one, because it was just, the acting was just so, like, just superb. And ultimately he's taking the can out, and that's going to lead to, like, how does somebody do that and not get emotional? And he's trying to save his mom, but he now is not saving his mother, and this has to
Yeah.
be the way. And he gets a hug, and it's just, that was a really, really nice scene. I thought it was really beautiful. And then ultimately that scene ends with him moving the tins to the top shelf so we can
Yes.
see his father's visual from the cameras that were blurred out, and Wayne Tech had to help
Yes.
encrypt it to make it. So it was clever in that regard. But yeah, great scenes all around. Highly recommend going to see The Flash. So Tim, is there anything else that you want to add to that, or by all means guide this? I could talk about The Flash all the time, and when we
I
start
know.
talking about moments, that's when I go, oh, like there's something in every scene that you could just go, brilliant acting, or like just the way that it carried the story. But as you can tell,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the film.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I've got you on, Jay, because you can go on and be like, yes, the Flash, and go to all these layers and nuances with it. So I've had the best time talking with you. Before I give my wrap up, do you want to give sort of like a summation wrap up and a rating? What do you reckon?
Highly, highly recommend this film. It is full of not just nostalgia, and not just like, it's not leading on the nostalgia for this to be a great film. It's just there to help this movie and carry the story along. But this story is really good. A great time travel storyline. It's got a lot of heart. The humor is really, really good. And I'm surprised how witty they were, actually, because we're
Mm.
so used to superhero films not swearing and being very, like, appropriate, I guess, if you want to say that. There's a lot of jokes in it where you're just like, oh wow, that I'm surprised they went there. But walking out of the film, people either love it or they did not like it at all. And I'm like, did we see the same film, or what am I missing that you guys? I highly recommend it. I would probably give it a 4.5 out of 5, if that's the rating.
Oh,
How do you rate this? Do you rate this out of 10 or out of 5?
out of 5, you got it nailed.
Yeah, 4.5 out of 5, I would give it. I really, really enjoyed it. Why I didn't give it that extra half, I'm not sure. I don't think anything's ever perfect. It's probably because of the
Sure.
CGI, possibly. I definitely enjoyed it regardless of some of the CGI that took me out of it.
Perfect. Nice wrap up, mate. Well, The Flash for me isn't a perfect film, but it did live up to the lofty expectations I had going into it off the back of early reactions like yourself, Jay, and online sentiment. It is fun, entertaining, and executes an adventure that has heart, stakes, and complexity. The return of Michael Keaton as Batman was what got my bum on the seat for this one, and I could not wipe the grin off my face watching him on screen. The Flash is a bloody good time, and it's so worth checking it out if you're after the adventure you've been waiting from the DCEU for many years. I'm going to rate The Flash 3.5 popcorn kernels.
There you go. Very good. Very good. And can I also say, definitely go watch Batman, or even Batman Returns, the Michael Keaton ones,
100%.
Man of Steel,
Yep.
anything that Zack Snyder did for the Justice League and all that. Definitely go watch those films, because it will make you, not that you need to watch them, but it will make you appreciate the film probably a bit more, especially because they're going back and forth, and a lot of events that happen in those films happen in this movie as well. So yeah, I highly recommend doing that.
Yeah, that's some good guidance. Well, The Flash is in Australian cinemas from June 15, and that's it for another episode of Popcorn Pals. I was joined by content creator Jayden Rodrigues. Jay, where can people find you on the internets and all the things that you do?
On Instagram and TikTok, you can find me at jrod_HD. You can find me on my YouTube channel if you type in Jayden Rodrigues, and everywhere else as well. Thanks for having me, Tim. Go for it. Sorry, go for it. Do your sign off.
No, that's it. Over to you to fill in anything else that you want to say, but I encourage you to check out Jay's stuff. Really, really fun content online. I always enjoy the stuff that you work on and the perspectives that you bring to everything in pop culture. So definitely go check out Jay out there.
And I'm so glad that you invited me on here. I love what you and Lee do. I love that we met each other at some of these premieres and these screenings, and we've managed to find some time to do this, because I was really nervous when you're like, let's do it. And obviously I understand how, there's there's a bit of a deadline on these stuff because it's so fresh, this movie, and you want to sort of capitalize on that. And I was so nervous that we wouldn't be able to make it work, but I'm so happy we got to do it. I'm so happy that you invited me here, and let's do it again. Let's geek out very, very soon, Tim.
Let's do it again, mate. And as always, thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Come and join in on the conversation. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram @Popcorn Podcast.